Welcome to Make Your Mark Live. My name is Mark Moyer, and I am hosting today's presentation with Dr. Jay Galea from San Diego, California. I'm so damn jealous. It's freezing cold where I am now, and I know you just came in from, I'm assuming, surfing or something or other. How you doing,
Yes,
Jay?
tanning. I was tanning. Yeah, it's a balmy 70 plus today. So not
Per,
prime timing weather, but we'll grin and bear it.
I'm sure you can handle it. But the whole thing about, we won't address things like tanning is probably not good for you, Jay. I'm just saying as a not doctor, but anyway, but I
So,
appreciate the answer. But listen, we got a lot of ground to cover today, but just a quick little introduction about you, doctor. You, I know you didn't grow up thinking you were going to be following this path. I think most of us probably didn't. I bet you were thinking you were going to be a professional hockey player at some point. I know you played a
yes.
lot of hockey. You attended, you're Canadian, and you attended the University of Toronto. You also then got smart and decided being, south and west was a good plan, and you finished up your studies in San Diego University. But you've got your PhD in sports psychology and counseling. So you're the guy to go to for all kinds of advice across the board. So there's your big intro. I'm not going to fill in the rest other than the fact that I believe you're still playing hockey. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm still goofing around, trying to relive the glory days every now and then. Yeah.
Yeah, in my case, I still play, but I never had any glorious days to actually relive. So I'm trying to create new ones, I guess. But anyway, but look, thanks for being on board today. And one of the most important things to really focus on, I believe today, especially as we go through a lot of this, the quarantining and the sheltering in place and so forth, is really how to keep our brains healthy and our brains and our bodies and our minds happy and sane and all that other kind of stuff. But before we jump into all the brain stuff, tell me a little bit about, in your opinion, I know you've done a ton of work with athletes. What do most athletes or people that have played sports at any point in their lives, what do you think they come to you mostly? Like, what is their biggest thing that they feel they need help with?
So it's a great question, Mark. The ones that walk in the door on average are coming in to talk about some sort of performance issue, right? How do I run faster? How do I score more goals, make more saves, whatever it may be. So there's usually a performance tag that's added to that whole idea. Now, with that, we also have some people that will come in and they have some really strong insights on themselves. They may have heeded the advice of someone close to them and said, I noticed that it's not just my performance, but it's things going on in my life. So what usually happens is that athlete will come on in, will lay down the foundation of where we want to go, much like what you did today in starting our meeting today. But from there, we're going to find out what are the structure pieces that should be there and what structure pieces might not be as solid as they need to be. And that could be things like, how's your life going? How's your health going? How do you manage stress? How do you manage anxiety? How do you manage the things that are thrown in front of you to deal with? And then from there, do you have a plan of dealing with this? And not to run away with this, but one of the big things that comes in a lot is an over amount of stress or anxiety. And part of what I do is educate the people that I'm working with. So rather than just sitting and listening to what they have to say, my, system or my belief is that we need to figure out how people learn, how they can empower themselves to make change in their life. And then from there, educate them on how they can make changes. So for example, when I have either a person come in that talks about having too much stress or too much anxiety with regards to their sport, the education piece that goes with that is, did you know that you need both to perform at your best? And when I tell athletes, hey, you need stress and you need anxiety for you to be your best. Did you know that? A lot of times I'll just get this blank look like, what are you talking about? Who needs stress? Who would want anxiety?
Well, but I think that I think most people tend to view stress as a negative thing. They say, well, oh man, I was so stressed today at work. I was so stressed on the commute. I was so driving in traffic stresses me out. But there are positive versions of stress, right? I'm assuming.
Oh, yes, tremendously so. You're 100% accurate. Some people talk about decision making. They talk about rationalizing information on a day-to-day basis. The human brain takes in anywhere from 6 to 8 million stimuli every second, where you're assessing things going on around you, what you're feeling, what you're smelling, sensing, hearing, whatever it may be.
Hmm.
And that stress, as you mentioned, often gets looped into the negative connotation of things, right? When in reality, that stress that we feel, like the example you gave, driving home, that could have been what kept you sharp so you didn't get into a car accident, or you avoided an accident. It could have kept you sharp to get you home safely.
That's interesting. So just maybe it's, I don't know if this is going to be a tangential question, but how does someone create positive stress, or can they?
Oh, totally they can. Totally they can. One of the things that we see in elite athletes a lot is the ability to create a fragmented mindset that initiates stress in a good way. And what do I mean by that? I'm sure any of our listeners right now, who are probably part of the, 10, 20, 30 million people who every Sunday night for the last couple of weeks are tuning into this little show called The Last Dance. We're learning more and more about this phenomenal athlete, Michael Jordan. And what you see again and again and again, it's almost like watching the workout scenes in a Rocky movie, is we're seeing how this incredible person used little tidbits of feelings, emotions, things that people said, to fabricate this mindset of I'm going to show you. I'm going to take it to the next level. Oh yeah, watch this. And it almost becomes like those little fragments of inspiration, motivation, were ones that he used to create this big bullseye that he would focus in on, right? So like we hear the stories, for example, one of the more recent ones was Magic Johnson talks about how in the Dream Team, something that Coach Daly had done, if we remember the show, is he split the team for scrimmages every day. And it was Team East versus Team West. And in one of the games, Magic's team got up a few points, and he said, I'm going to go and poke the bear a little bit, and more or less walked over and said, hey, you better turn it on and show us your Air Jordan, or we're going to run away with this. And all of a sudden, he took that as a threat, right? You're challenging who I am and what I can do. And he zones in on that. Another example that I would use, and I use this with a lot of younger athletes, is many years ago, there was a movie with James Caan called The Program. And it was about this collegiate football team. And one of the superstars on the team, what you saw again and again throughout the movie, was this defensive player, a linebacker, I believe. And in the middle of the game, what he would do is not just trash talk, he would fragment his thinking to create a scenario that would bolster up his anger and his adrenaline. And he'd look over at his competition and say, hey, I remember you. You're the guy that tried to break into my mother's house. I remember you. You're the guy who threw a rock at our home, right? I remember. His competition is completely frazzled with this. Like, what are you talking about? But it did what it needed to do to help create that positive stress.
What's interesting is that actually about 174,000 years ago, I took some acting lessons, and one of the methods that they teach is just that, where when you're trying to get amped up to do a scene where you're either angry or sad or whatever it is, you're supposed to conjure up something that happened to you that puts you in that mindset. And and that can be very effective. So that's really interesting, because even though that's I don't know if imagining someone breaking into my mother's house is going to give me positive stress necessarily, but the whole point of this is that if you get yourself and your endorphins and everything else amped up and fired up and ready to go, that's going to increase your performance at the end of the day.
Yeah, it really, one of the terms I use a lot with people that I work with is creating your recipe for success, right? And when you're creating that recipe for success, you need to know what tastes good, what feels good for you. So for some people, humor, creating funny scenarios that gets the blood pumping and gets our mind maybe a little bit more relaxed is what we need to get us bolstered and energized to go out and perform. For others, it could be trying to conjure up that inner anger, that inner fire, that inner spice, shall we say, to really go out there and go boom and perform like that, like a firecracker, like a rocket taking off, right? I had a few teammates that were not the skilled players of the team. They were the ones that protected the skilled players of the team. And what was quite odd for me as we got older was seeing how these guys actually were friends.
Oh, yeah.
And they were buddies, right? And we're seeing a lot of this now with movies that are coming on out that are talking about the behind the scenes of the role player, right? Like a great insight to this is a movie that I believe is on Amazon Prime. It's called Tough Guy. It's the back end story of Bob Probert.
Yeah.
And you see that these guys who had to go out and be combatants to protect their teammates, they were friends with the guys that they had to fight.
Yeah.
So how could you do that, right? How do you do that? Well, this is how you do that. This is that mindset you have to slip into.
Now, so moving with that, are there specific things that the people participating today can do themselves as almost like exercises? And it's not something where you're going to move your brain around or whatever it is. And that actually is a bad thing if you do it too much, because that causes concussions. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Right.
But what kind of, are there things that I can do when I'm coming off this webinar that I can do right away that will really increase my, whether it's brain power, brain stamina, brain health, etc.? What would you recommend?
Well, one of the things that I would recommend all the time for every athlete, and every athlete at the elite level does this in some way, shape, or form, but might not eloquently be able to describe what he or she does, is the tool of visualization. Right. Visualization is something where there's so many ways nowadays with the technology that we have that you can do this in such a much more powerful way. And what I'm referring to is, visualization years ago when I was playing was sitting back and looking at different scenarios that could possibly happen to you in a game. And then preparing, how am I going to take that on? How am I going to face it? How am I going to combat it? Whatever it may be. But visualization now, with the help of this new invention called YouTube, or this new thing that just started called GoPro, a lot of athletes have film on themselves. And I would be telling athletes to break down films in their mind of scenarios they know they need to address. Maybe it's even in scenarios they want to address. And when we're looking at creating visualization into what you do to create that stronger mind, that stronger preparedness, I want to really express with importance to athletes, you need to incorporate all five senses. And not many people talk about that. When we talk about visualization, people seem to think that they're playing a silent movie in their head, and it's not that. It's a silent movie that has been plugged in to surround sound. It's Dolby sound. It's IMAX movie quality. You should be able to hear what's going on in the moment, see what's going on in the moment, feel what's going on in the moment. Are you hot? Are you cold? Are you sweaty? Can you smell anything, right? Can you taste anything? I mean, I know athletes that are addicted to chewing onto their sweat pad and tasting the salt in their mouth from their helmet or whatever it is that they've put into their mouth so they don't sustain a concussion, right? Chewing on that mouthpiece, right? Incorporate as many of the senses as you can into creating this movie. That's the first part to this. The second part is I'd be saying to athletes, don't be afraid to see bad things. And I'll say that again. When we talk about visualization, a lot of people seem to be under the belief that I can only see positive. I can only see good things. I can only see what I want to see. That's great. That's fine. But at the same time, it's even more powerful to prepare for things that might go wrong. One of the things that makes some of the great athletes so great is they do a little bit of Back to the Future when they do visualization. They have their perfect scenario that they plan for, and then they come back and they plan again with negative things happening along the way. So that's why when we're watching a game and the commentator goes, I can't believe how quickly he responded. I can't believe how quickly he picked up the ball and ran with it. I can't believe that he made something out of nothing. Well, there's a very, very good chance that that athlete has already mentally prepared for that and is aware of that. Just as if they're a running back and the hole doesn't open up, they got to make something happen. You don't just sit there in the middle of the game with the game on the line with 5 seconds left, say, okay, let's figure this out now. No, you mentally prepare for that.
Well, it's interesting. It's very similar to let's say, for example, a hockey goalie who is envisioning someone coming in on a breakaway, and it's a specific player that he may know goes top shelf or whatever it might be, or 5-hole every time, and envisions it. But maybe he envisions, as you said, giving up that goal and feeling really pissed off about it and saying, well, now I'm really going to focus on putting my right shoulder up and making the save. And that's brilliant, though, the whole concept of building into your visualization. I think I said that right. That's one of those words. Anyway, building into it, the concept that maybe things go wrong, but here's how you then rebound from that. That's excellent. So those are great exercises. The idea of visualization. Now, what else? Now, is there something? I mean, look, I know I'm going to state the obvious, and we hear it every day. People talk about the importance of sleep and of diet and of exercise and so forth. But let me just quickly jump on for just a brief amount of time, the idea of sleep, because there's some people I know that really struggle sleeping. They can't fall asleep, or they can't get out of bed when they need to, that sort of thing. There's others like me that are lucky that I lay down, I close my eyes, and see ya, lights out. And then 6, 7, 8 hours later, I'm sorry, never 8, 6 or 7 or something, I'm up. But now, in your opinion, because you've done a lot of work with this stuff, are certain people, I mean, does everybody need a certain amount? Or are there some people that, for whatever reason, the way they're wired, they don't need as much as others? I'd love to know that.
I believe in the latter. I know a lot of highly, highly productive people that sleep 4 to 5 hours a day. And their ages are between the ages of, say, 27, 28 to 45, 50.
Okay.
They are just people who are wired that way. I also know a lot of people who it's the opposite. You might think they're part grizzly bear and they will hibernate.
Yeah.
What I seem to see is common between both, though, is this: the ones who sleep well, sleep best, they tend to be the people who have pre-planned, premeditated, and prepared for whatever the next day is about to unveil. So they're not waiting the night before to start visualization. They're not. They're doing this, right? So to tie it back to that theme, athletes, for the most part, every single one I've worked with is an honest and truthful person. But the problem is they might not describe certain things as accurate as they may be. And what I mean by that, to tie it into sleep, is you'll hear athletes say things like, well, at game time, I just turn it on and I go. Game time, I just engage and boom, go, right? And that's not really the truth. Yes, come game time, they performed at an elite level and they got themselves exploded into the situation and took control. But Monday, they discussed the game plan. Tuesday, they watched some video. Wednesday, they did a walkthrough. Thursday, they incorporated everything on above. Friday, they had a little walkthrough again with some special plays. And then Saturday, they played. You didn't just turn it on an hour before the game. You didn't just flick a switch. That switch was flicked off Monday, right? So the athlete who starts incorporating little things throughout the week, it's no different than what our parents would tell us and our teachers told us in grade school, high school. Start studying a week in advance. Start studying a week ahead of time.
Well, it's interesting because the biggest thing that I see athletes lose the minute they retire, and how they often fall off a cliff and really struggle, is that lack of structure and that lack of having their day planned out for them. And just as you said, when you have things planned, it's almost like you don't need to worry about what's coming next because you've already got it all set up and established. And so with an athlete, they know that they're waking up at 6:30, they're training, they're eating their breakfast at 7, they're showering or whatever it is, they're training, they're doing this, they're doing that. But then when you're retired and you leave your sport, whether you're a student athlete or a professional, an amateur, whatever it is, when you don't have that reason to wake up, suddenly it's, well, I don't really need to wake up. I don't really need to get up. And then it's like, well, I really don't need to do anything next. And then from there, it's, so, you're spot on with this, the idea of structure and a schedule and sleep. So, but I don't want to let you off the hook that easily on the sleep thing. And I again, strikingly, I'm not a doctor. But I play one on this webinar. No,
the Holiday Inn not too long ago.
That's right. That's how I save money on Geico. Anyway, getting into all the advertisers while I can. Hang on a second. Wait, is there any though? Anyway, but what I was going to say is, look, I've read that the first hour or two are this happens, the next hour or two this happens, and REM happens, and REM is the most important or the best part or whatever it is. So what I guess I'm curious about is, for those people that are the high performers that sleep 4 or 5 hours, are they just having shorter segments of each, or are they losing out on that last important chunk, but they don't need it? I mean, what do you know about that stuff?
So for the people who have the shorter duration of sleep, they are the people who can dive right into that stage 1 REM sleep right away.
Okay.
They have this unique ability to just boom and get into it. A lot of sports science now has been spent analyzing this. And I can tell you a little bit about a program that I've worked with. Some of the athletes offline who are members of the U.S. national volleyball team. And a few years ago, they started doing sleep studies on this team, because in their season, as it starts ramping up, it's quite common for both the men's and the women's team to be in 6 different countries in a matter of 3 months. And what was happening is performance was all over the charts, and they basically deduced it back to sleep. So what they decide to use is different forms of technology, whether it be your Fitbit. There's another really cool device out there called, what's it called? I think it's called News, I believe. I can't remember what the name is exactly, but I can see it simply because I know one of the famous trainers that works with LeBron James was a big part of the development of this. It's a device that looks exactly like a watch, and it helps monitor when you hit your maximal sleep periods. So what it does is it sets people up for success. Hey, listen, you're a guy that needs 8 hours. Start winding it down now. And it really starts to educate people as they get older what exactly they need. Like, I have friends that still get mad at me because when we met in high school, I introduced them to some little show called David Letterman. And all of a sudden, these people who went to bed at like 9, 10, like, I don't know what they were thinking, are now going to bed at midnight And we get to school the next day and they're like, dude, I hate your guts. I couldn't go to bed till I heard his top 10, right? But now you get later in life and, thank God Dave's off the air because there's no way I'm making it to the top 10.
TiVo.
TiVo, exactly.
DVRs. Anyway,
there you go.
Now, look, we can cover a couple of these topics forever. So, and we're going to save a lot of these for future webinars here. But, we talked about sleep here. Obviously, diet and exercise play a big role in not just your physical health, but your mental health, your brain health, and so forth. And we don't need to get too deep into that because I think it's one of those things where you can ask 100 people their opinions about a diet and you'll get 150 answers, right? Everybody's got their own 2 cents worth. I mean, my diet is probably the healthiest because it consists of lots of ice cream and sugar wafers and other stuff like that. But, and they're so good. So sorry for all you people that don't eat that stuff. I'm sorry. But anyway, but with that said, along with the diet and the exercise, and I think with exercise, again, you're going to have every type of person recommending all kinds of different things for that. But I think the biggest and most important thing is just to be active, just to do something every day if possible. Do you have like a go-to? I mean, I might as well ask, do you have sort of a go-to, even if it's a 10-minute, 15-minute thing that you'd recommend people do?
If we're talking about diet, sure. Like I could sit and talk about the importance of protein. I could talk about the importance of your vegetables and everything that your parents want you to eat, right? As dumb and as odd as it may sound, it's going to be the same thing you've heard again and again. But one of the things that I would say to the young athletes growing up is you cannot underestimate the power and strength of protein in your diet. If you're a young athlete between, say, the ages of, I would say, 16 and 25, before and after every workout, you got to be implementing some form of protein into your diet. To kind of take that to the next level, the best of the best are really, really in tune with their body. And, when you're younger, I know elite athletes that are eating burgers and fries. They're going to Taco Bell, right? I mean,
right.
they're doing what they do because they're young and they're burning it off, right? I work with Olympic level athletes who are cyclists. You talk about dream diet. These guys are drinking Cokes during the race. These guys are going through an entire box of Fruit Loops after a race. Like, this is the dream diet, right? But these guys are burning anywhere from 10 to 12,000 calories in a day, right?
Wow.
Like, this is nothing to them, right?
Wow.
So, to round it up, it's to really know your body, And a good example for that would be look at some of the athletes that have prolonged time in sport. So if I'm looking in hockey, right, I'm looking at a guy like Chris Chelios. Not only did they say this guy who's playing into his, early to mid 40s at an elite level, getting, incredible amounts of time playing, averaging between 25 to 30 minutes a game, covering the best on the planet. This guy, people would say again and again, just knew his body. They just knew he just knew what he needed to be in shape, how he was feeling, how much to push himself, and he was able to get the most out of his body. The same going for a guy that, I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a pretty good football player. His name's Tom Brady. Completely, in my mind, revolutionized the way that we train. And he's got an exceptional trainer in the name of, a gentleman by the name of Alex Rodriguez, I believe is his name. And what they do for training, it's unheard of. It's so simplistic. It's high intensity, but it's so simplistic, and it does his body well. And I can say this to you, I look at the athletes that are coming out of an NHL locker room today, and they look nothing like the athletes that were coming out in the 90s, early 2000s. it's incredible. Like, I remember being a goalie in college and having the same workout plan as all of the players. We were all given the same workout package. It didn't matter if you're a forward, a defenseman, if you were 6'6" or 5'6", and you were all told to do the exact same thing. You'll never see that today, right? But the tweak with it is, are you in tune with your body? Do you know what feels good that will allow you to play good?
Now, so that's the diet part and the exercise part. How I mean, when you say, you know, being in tune with your body and so forth, I mean, I personally feel I'm extremely in tune with my body, but it's, you know, but it's not really a good thing. I don't know. I mean, my body says, hey, stop eating so much crap. And my brain says, no, don't listen. Anyway,
Right.
but I'm going overboard a little bit there. But so in terms of the, you know, we talk a lot, and your expertise covers a lot that surrounds how we think and how, you know, brain power and also concussion work. Let's shift into the concussion aspect of things just briefly, because, you know, obviously, athletes of most sports may be in a situation where they can suffer some form of traumatic brain injury, but this is also the case with veterans. It's the case with first responders. It's the case with construction, anybody that's doing work that involves the potential of a head injury. How would, well, first of all, give us the sort of 15-second, if it's possible, of description of what really is a concussion.
So a concussion is a traumatic brain injury, is what it is. And a concussion is something that can happen to anybody at any point in time, anywhere. It's not something that's just seen in one sport or one exercise. It can happen at any point in time. It could happen slipping down the stairs. It could happen you bending over, putting stuff in your refrigerator, and you hit your head on a drawer or the door. It could happen at any point in time. One of the things that happens with concussion is it's a bruising of your brain, and depending on the angle and the velocity upon which that first impact happens, it will depict what exactly could be your injury. It's not all the same. And you know, one of the things that I'll tell you, Mark, is we have a scenario with a brain injury called a coup contra coup indication, and that's the results of your brain shifting inside your brain skull. Mm-hmm. So when that first impact happens, your brain sways back, it hits the back wall of your skull, and then comes forward again and may hit the front of your skull and then land back, hopefully in its homeostasis spot. But the angle upon which that impact happens will create where that shift happens with the shaking, and all of that will depict what your injury may cause and may affect in who you are, what you are, and how you respond.
Well, you know what's interesting is what, you know, I think some people that have had the opportunity to wear a football helmet or a helmet of any kind, and you can feel it's right on top of you, and it encloses you. I think most people think that that's what's going on with your brain, that your brain is occupying all the room inside of your skull, and it's squished up against it and all like nice and cozy in there. But that's not necessarily the case. It's floating around in there. And that's why, as you said, if it's as simple as slipping on the ice on the sidewalk or something and you hit the back of your head and you're kind of like, wow, what the hell just happened? Well, what the hell just happened is things sloshed around and knocked around a bit in there. Now, how, you know, you've had a ton of experience with this sort of thing. What are some of the sort of early indications that you've suffered that versus just, holy crap, I banged my head, ouch, you know?
Right. Very good question. Some of the things that are common that you'll see, and we'll talk about some of the things that people can do to be aware of friends, family, loved ones as well. But some of the common ones that you'll see are instantly nausea, headache, sensitivity to light. Those are your top three.
Okay.
You know, when someone has had a severe concussion that affects them immediately, we notice right off the bat our stomach is all over the place, our head is spinning, And when we see them try to get treatment on the sideline and they look up and it's just everything is so bright and it's like I can't even stand to be in this moment, right? You don't know what's going to happen next. You also have things like ringing of the ears. Thus is that old saying, I got my bell rung, right? And then from there, that's where things start to get a little bit more serious. And one of the things that I would throw to people to be aware of, if you're a sideline person who's watching a loved one or someone you know very well get injured like this, I would tell people to really start gauging personality cues. And the main one would be things like irritability. And it's to say to yourself, if your friend who gets injured today, normally is a person who can take a joke, is a little bit, patient, is someone who's jovial, relaxed, always in a good mood. Well, now all of a sudden is short, grumpy, volatile, takes a scenario and no longer laughs at it and takes that scenario and gets explosive. Well, these are those underlying things that we don't really talk about when we're discussing concussions and brain injuries.
Now, how quickly can some of these symptoms show up? I mean, is it almost immediate where I slip and fall and suddenly feel nauseous and the headache and so forth? Or is it something that takes a while to manifest itself? What's the usual?
Really, really good question. For some people, you can experience those physical attributes instantly. But it's very, very common for all of these things to bubble to the surface anywhere from a week to a month later.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
So some people may not even remember the source of what happened, I guess. Interesting.
Which is a big part of the problem that you're touching on right now. And especially when you're dealing with young athletes. When you're dealing with those teenagers that get injured, they rebound really quick because their bodies are so resilient to different physical stressors, right? I mean, we could all do the old boy when I was your age story of falling off your bike and still going out and playing 5 games in between. But still, back in those days, right, I would bring some memory to people now. How many of us actually went home after playing with our friends, after a gym class, sustaining an injury, and then when your parents asked you, so how'd your day go? How many of us actually told our parents, oh, guess what happened to me in gym class today? We were playing, dodgeball and I took one to the head, right? Like none of us, you never discuss those things.
Right.
So what happens for the young teenager who may have an incident like this, weeks go by, maybe a month goes by. Mom and dad are now starting to put it together and go, there's something going on with him or her. The irritability, they're grumpy, not sleeping normally. They're sleeping longer. They're not eating as much. What's going on here? Hey, all of a sudden some questions, Q&A go back and forth and they're at a practice or an event and all of a sudden coach or a parent comes up to mom and dad and says, hey, it looks like he's responding really well. It looks like he's getting better from when he got hurt. And then all of a sudden, mom and dad are like, we don't even know. What are you talking about? We weren't at that game. We weren't at that practice.
Interesting. Yeah.
Now you got to go back to the doctor with little Johnny and this young kid between the ages of, say, 14 or to 20. Tell me what happened. Oh, well, I think I fell down. I think I got hit. I got tripped. Whatever. Did you fall in the front of your head, the back of your head? They say, I kind of just, I kind of fell. And the gray that you have is so hard to figure out what's really going on.
Now, before we go any further, please feel free, anybody, to throw questions in the Q&A section at the bottom. We actually do have a question I'd love to address because I think it sort of follows in with this. And, one of our participants is asking, can you address second impact syndrome?
Yeah, second impact syndrome is a scary thing. Second impact syndrome is something where I can tell you a scary story that happened a few years ago in California, where a young athlete was getting ready for a big game, and it's the game of hockey. And anyone who's played hockey in the last 20 to 30 years would know of a little team bonding thing called locker boxing. And this 17-year-old was in the locker room. He took a punch to the face and with his helmet on, and boom, he went down. And as he went down, his head hit one of the benches in the locker room. And the great thing about 17-year-olds is everyone in the building will know that they were up to something no good. And when the coaches showed up and the manager tried to get in the locker room, the door was closed, right? The team, going into emergency mode, decided to pick up their teammate, prop him up against the wall, take his helmet off, and douse him with water. And coach comes in and, hey, you guys are goofing around, and we're on in 10 minutes. What are we doing? Let's go, right? We've all experienced it before. Well, sure enough, this lucky individual was fortunate enough to start the game. Puck drops, game starts, he gets a pass at center ice, and boom, he gets lit up like a Christmas tree. And he's not getting up. And about 20 minutes go by, he's still not moving. 45 minutes later, it was decided, you see the Zamboni doors open and an ambulance is on the ice taking him home. Second impact syndrome, what we know is that after a person has been injured, there's a 33% chance that you'll be re-injured again. And no one can obviously predict when that's going to happen, and no one can predict how you're going to respond. But just know that there's a very good chance, 33% chance, you're going to get injured again. I equate that information like that of having a dent in your face mask in football, hockey, lacrosse. When you have a dent in your face mask in any of those three sports, you know that the worst thing you could do is to try to hammer that dent out. The moment you try to hammer that dent out in that face cage, that mask, you've just made that mask more susceptible to injury. It's actually weaker. And we need to know this, because it's really, really, really important that we titrate ourselves back into the game properly. And titrate means, return to play. Don't cut corners. Don't be in a rush. Don't try to glaze over things thinking that I got to get back, right? Well, just know this, right? For a lot of elite level sports that young athletes hope to be a part of, it's like they say in boxing, if the right hook doesn't get you, the left one will. If you think you're able to fool scouts and coaches to get to that next level, you still have to undergo something called a physical. Mm-hmm. And what's going to happen when you can't do a balance test? What's going to happen when you can't stand with your arms out and close your eyes? I don't know what to tell you, right? So if the right hook doesn't get you, the left one will. Don't shortchange yourself. Don't rush it, because it could be even worse afterwards.
Well, look, and I think that's important for an athlete to know, but we all know that athletes are so uber competitive that most athletes will just sort of wipe it off, scratch it off, whatever it is, and coach, I'm ready. And right. What we really need to work on more is having the coach fully understand what they're doing by sending a player back in there who suffered this sort of an injury. And whether it's the coaches or the team physicians, if we're at a professional level, or whatever, collegiate, et cetera, or just even the parents, but people need to be better educated on what is actually happening. And quite frankly, I don't see enough, being involved with some little league sports and this and that, I don't see enough education of even the parents knowing what does it mean if, as you said earlier, Johnny or Jimmy or whatever you said, gets leveled in hockey, football, whatever the sport is, lacrosse. Well, come on, just dust it off and get back in the game, kid. Or, holy crap, we've got to really take a look at see what's happened to him, especially if he starts saying, Mom, I don't feel great, or whatever it is. and same with coaches and so on. But now, you know, NFL is trying their best. We always see now that the players with the protocol, the same in hockey, where they need to, if the off-ice officials see certain things that lead them to believe that the player should get tested and so forth, the players are usually pretty resistant to that or shrug it off. But do you feel, in your opinion, that that's not only like an important step, but is it enough, or do you think they're doing the right thing? It used to be in the old days, how many fingers do you see, you know, but we know that that's not really an indicator at all. But what's your opinion about all that?
Well, I think that we're getting better. I think we're getting better at talking about this injury. I think we're getting better at acknowledging it as a major injury. You know, when a person blows out their knee and needs an ACL, MCL, PCL injury, we kind of look at that and go, oh, you know what? He's gone for the season, but he'll be back, right? It's scary that we are so forgiving and understanding for a knee injury, but for a brain injury, we still have a lot of people in high authoritative positions and that look at that as a fluffy injury. And one of the things that I hear, you know, some of the old school coaches share with me is that, you know, oh, that's all I hear about now. It's all I hear about now. It's all that we talk about. Well, it's not that it's all we talk about. We've known it's been there forever. It's just now we're starting to feel comfortable to talk about it. And now, by the blessings of so many amazing athletes who've got tremendous amounts of courage and strength to share their stories and put it on out there, right? Now we're starting to gather that, right? And for those old school coaches and the parents who want to be in denial of all these different things, right? I mean, there's so many important things for them to know that should validate the reason for getting care and acknowledging it. And it's to tell you, like, you know, straight out, if you're a Division I athlete and you can't play, you have no scholarship, right? If you're a Division I athlete and you know, you're able to fool your coaches, but meanwhile you're failing every class, you've just lost your scholarship, right? I can understand the athlete who's making a lot of money and is worried that someone's going to take their spot. Well, here's the deal. Club owner, team owner, you also have to be wary of the fact that if that athlete feels pressure to go back and play, you better have a lot of liability insurance.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
That's where that's going, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So again, if the right hook doesn't get you, the left one will on the back end of things.
Well, and you're absolutely right. I see greater awareness. I see greater acceptance, especially with not just things like concussions and traumatic brain injury, but also with mental health. And you know, initially people used to say, oh, well, on the mental health side of things, if you were suffering that, well, you know, you're just, you know, over there, or people never admitted it. But now the stigma behind that's really going away, and you see more and more athletes coming forward with that, which is very important. The same thing with veterans, you know, military veterans who suffer TBI in any sort of way. You know, there's greater acceptance that they can come forward and say, look, you know, my ears are ringing or whatever it is, versus just suck it up and deal with it kind of a thing. So I think it's so important because, you know, I think what we need to do is understand that, you know, the brain is a muscle that can heal itself, but if you pull it too hard, it's not going to come back. And we need that. We need it.
Oh, I agree. And I'll tell you that this little tidbit, Mark, which we haven't shared, is I really, 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 really feel for the families and the children, the wives, the husbands of people who have suffered or are suffering TBI, because it's not an individual thing. It's a family thing. Yeah. You know, I know what my mother went through. My father suffered near the end of his life a traumatic brain injury. And I know what she went through. I know what our family went through. We had what was called perfect day syndrome, perfect day syndrome was if the day didn't go perfect, it was going to be hell in that house. And, you know, we could have everything planned to go out to dinner and have a great family event, but one little thing goes wrong, boom, like the whole house blows up. And it's not something that just the individual goes through or just the wife, the husband goes through, the whole family goes through. And if you don't know that, then you just don't know that. And this is part of the ongoing saga for a lot of retired athletes who have gone from high level performance to some sort of injury happens that involves a TBI to now it results in the rest of their life. You know, you do a lot of work in helping athletes transition. I mean, how difficult is it to help someone transition who literally comes to a stoplight, gets so frustrated that they feel they want to get out and punch the person beside them in the opposite car because they look at them funny. I've worked with those people, and it's a scary thing, right? But if we're not aware of what could happen, we will never really be able to acknowledge what's happening right now when we're trying to understand a person who says, you know, I'm not feeling too well.
So this has all been wonderful. And as I said, we could go on for another 4 hours and 12 minutes. But what I'd like to do is sort of tie together a couple of the pieces here. So repeat for me again, if you could. And some people jumped on a little bit late, but what is, just throw out just again, reminder, couple pieces of advice that you know, we talked about regarding, you know, improving our brain health and our brain power and performance, and, you know, some of the things that we can do to really help ourselves with that.
Yeah. So again, one of the things that we discussed was the idea of incorporating visualization.
Yeah.
We
Good.
discussed, you know, how to know your body better and being able to be in tune with your body in terms of what it needs when you're training, so that you're not overtraining or undertraining. But we're also looking at the all-encompassing part of how does this work into your life, right? I mean, some of the best athletes seem to look like they have a great life, right? And it's because they take this total holistic approach of balancing the things in their life. I tend to use the term a backpack when you perform. When you perform, you put a backpack on, and that backpack is filled with everything you need to be successful for that game, as well as everything you carry in your life. The lighter your backpack, the better you're going to perform.
Oh,
you know,
that is awesome. I'm going to steal that, but if by telling you that, that's not really stealing. So anyway,
no.
but that was great. I like that backpack because it's absolutely true, and it's something I talk about all the time when we talk about you know, the importance of really training athletes to be ready for the day that they retire. Well, you're not going to tell them today, hey, listen, you're definitely going to retire, so focus on what's plan B, because they're like, no, I'm never going to retire. I got to kick ass in my sport. But if you tell them they're going to perform better, if they don't have as much, you know, like weight on their shoulders about what they're going to be doing afterwards, they've got that figured out, then they're going to perform better on the field. It's the same sort of thing. But the backpack, I love that. So I really appreciate your time today, Dr. Jay. Dr. J, what the hell?
Thank
Anyway, I just thought of that. So anyway, can you dunk?
Yeah, I'm really good with coffee and donuts. I'm
Nice.
really
But listen, thanks for being on today. You're just exactly what I love having on this Make Your Mark Live episode, and as it all ties in with the Win Again Academy. And what we're trying to do is just really give athletes the ability, and non-athletes, to really learn about a wide variety of topics. And you've really hit a home run with everything. So thank you so much for your time today. What's the best way for people to reach you?
One of the best ways for people to reach me is you can reach me at jay@headsetsports.com. And to do my shameless little plug,
Yeah, please do.
Headset Sports is a sports psychology system that my colleague and I, Dr. Peter Papa de Janis in Toronto, put together a few years ago. And basically what it is in 5 seconds or less is it's a tool that you can use to create your own personal recipe for success. And we give athletes a little something to do every week. It's completely live and it's 100% confidential. And we have several high-performing programs throughout North America and professional teams in North America that are using our system right now to not only track how their athletes are doing, but to help each and every one of their athletes get a personalized and individualized program to strengthen their mental skill sets. So
Nice.
feel free to reach out, Jay at headsetsports.com. I'd love to talk
And
to
you're
you.
on social media as well, I'm assuming. We can find you
Yes.
there on LinkedIn and so on, Facebook. And where are you? What's your handle, kind of a thing?
So my handle for Instagram is Galea, Galea .phd. You can find me there on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn, and you can easily find my personal website at drgalea.com.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for being with us, Jay, today. This has been incredibly educational for me. I've learned an awful lot about how the brain works and how to boost performance and so forth. Thanks so much for being on board, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you for having me. You're fun. I could do this all day long with you. You're great. Thank you so much,
Excellent.
Mark.
You're the best. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.